What's up everyone, I'm Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and in this super exciting video, we're going to look at the timer and the onReceive call in our SwiftUI views. And it is exactly what it sounds like. We're going to put a timer into our view, and then every time that timer goes off, we're going to do something on the screen. So we're going to start off very simply by just putting the current time on the screen, and every second it's going to update the time. And then we're going to get into some more advanced ways how we can use timers to create custom animations, to create custom features, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun. So of course we're going to start really simple, but then we're going to get into a bunch of real world examples, and I think you guys are going to really love this one. And the reason I'm covering this video in this section of the course is because although we don't need to import Combine specifically, we are using publishers and subscribers. In the last video in this series, we downloaded data from the internet using the Combine framework. And in that video, I introduced you guys to publishers. And as you're going to see, a timer is actually a publisher. It is an object that publishes values over time. That's what a publisher is. And then we're going to use the onReceive call, which is a really convenient SwiftUI function so that we can listen to that publisher, also known as subscribing. And we're going through this all because I feel like this is a very easy introduction to publishers and subscribers. And in the next video, we're going to actually take this a step further and create our own totally custom publishers and subscribers. All right, that's enough of me talking. Let's jump into Xcode and set up some timers.
All right, welcome back everyone. I'm back in our Xcode project, of course, and let's right-click the navigator, create a new file for this video. Let's make a SwiftUI view and let's call it Timer Bootcamp. Go ahead and click Create. Once you're inside, click Resume on the canvas. I'm going to hide the navigator because we're not going to use it, and let's get coding. Let's start out by creating a very simple screen. We're going to create a Z-stack. Open the brackets, and I'm going to make a background just to make it look nice and pretty as we're coding. So let's create a radial gradient because I taught gradients, but I haven't been using them much and they look awesome in SwiftUI. So radial gradient, I'm going to put the gradient, the center, start radius all on separate lines so it's a little easier to read. And let's just change up the colors quick. Let's do color. Let's use a color literal. And I'm going to double click on this and let's use maybe this second purple here. And then let's do color, color literal. And I'm going to use a darker shade. So I'm going to go down to maybe this one here. I think that will look pretty cool. Let's keep it center, radius 500, that's fine. And let's just make it ignore the safe area. So it goes to the edges of our screen. And I love how nice this looks already with just one simple line of code. But on top of the gradient, let's add a simple text. And let's just say hi for a second. Let's give this a font. Let's use the .system. And we'll use the size, weight, design. I'm going to make this pretty big, so let's do maybe 100. The weight, I'll do semi-bold. And the design, let's do a different font that we don't normally use. So let's do rounded. That might look cool. All right. Very simple screen here. Let's give it a foreground color of white. Let's give it a line limit of 1 so that it always stays on one line, and a minimum scale factor of 0.1 so that if it gets too big, it scales down to stay on one line. If you're confused about anything so far, I have done a video on gradients and a video on texts. So let's keep moving forward here. And the point of this video is to discuss timers. So at the top of my view here, I'm going to add a timer. We're going to say let timer equals timer.publish. And when I look at this publish completion here, we can see down here that it's going to return us a timer.timerPublisher. So let's click enter on that. And again, in the last video, I introduced you guys to Combine, and in Combine, it's all about publishers and subscribers. And although we don't have to actually import Combine to use these timer publishers, they are basically using the same logic. We're creating a publisher that's going to publish values over time, and then in a second we're going to subscribe to this publisher so that we can listen to it, every time it publishes some information, we can perform actions. So very simply, this timer, we want it to publish every 1 second. And the run loop, we're going to press the period here, and this is basically what thread we want it to run on. So we can run on the main thread or the current thread. And this is going to be updating our UI, so I'm going to use the main thread. We can press the period here, and there are a couple options. You can read through these in your own time. I pretty much just use common almost all the time. So let's just do common. And one thing we're going to add here is .autoconnect. And this basically means it's just going to start this publisher, this timer, as soon as this screen loads. So autoconnect is just going to make the timer start publishing as soon as we initialize this view. All right, with this one very simple line of code, we now have a timer on our screen, but of course we're not doing anything with it. So on our Z stack here, let's listen to this timer. So we're going to call .onReceive. And when we use this, the onReceive, we need to pass in a publisher. So this is any publisher in our app that is producing values, that's publishing values. And of course, we have our timer. So we're just going to pass our timer in here. And when that publisher is publishing values, we can actually get that value right here where this underscore is. So I can put here value. So this is the value that's being passed in to the timer. Now I want to point out here that the value here is going to be based on the type that this publisher is publishing. So this timer publisher publishes dates, and that's what we're going to get here. But if we use a different publisher that maybe was publishing data or booleans or strings, that's what would come through as this value. So while this is a timer and this is a date, let's just add a date onto the screen here. So we're going to say, so let's say at state var, we'll say current date of type date. And we'll set it equal to today's date for now. This is, when you use this in Swift, it's just the current exact date of right now. So let's take this current date and call .description just to get it onto the screen quickly. See what the text looks like. All right, and when this timer goes off every second, because we have it at 1 second up here, we just want to update the current date. So I'm just going to set current date equal to the value that this timer is publishing. If we click play on the simulator, we can see it was that easy to actually get our time to update on the screen. So every second this is updating, and that was pretty simple. And the main thing to really point out here is that here we set up a publisher that's going to publish values. And then down here we are subscribing to the publisher. So we're listening to that timer. And every time it publishes a value, we're performing an action. Now this is obviously a very simple implementation, but let's take this a couple steps further just to get some use cases out of this timer. So first of all, this current date is good, but I will touch on the date formatter because this doesn't look very pretty on our screen right now. So let's add a var, we'll call it date formatter. It will be of type date formatter, and then I will open the brackets. And we're setting up with this open brackets because we're gonna have, because this is a computed property, so we're gonna do a little bit of logic to set this up. So we're gonna say let formatter equals a new date formatter. Open close parentheses. We're going to say formatter dot, let's do time style, and let's set it equal to medium. Then we'll return the formatter. Zoom out here real quick. And when we go to put this text on the screen, let's actually use the date formatter dot string from, and then we'll pass in the current date. Let's try it again. Now we have a nice formatted date. It should look a little better. Beautiful. 6:09 p.m. And FYI, if you wanted to, we could add the formatter here dot date style, and then we can add in our date as well. Let's do medium. Now we have the date. So you can obviously play around with this. If you only wanted dates, you could take out the time. And we can do maybe dot full to get the entire time. This is pretty cool, but there's a lot more that we can actually do with this timer. So let's actually comment some of this out and do another example. So let's just call this current time. I'm going to use the / asterisk and then the * / to make a multi-line comment. And then I'm going to use the command option left arrow to fold up the code. And underneath this, let's then do a countdown. And for our countdown, let's add an @state var, let's call it count, of type int, and we'll set it equal to maybe 10 to start. We'll do an @state var, we'll say finished text of type string, and we'll set it equal to nil. Sorry, this should be an optional string. Alright, for our text, let's get rid of this date formatter, and we're going to say finished text. And then since the finished text is optional, if there is no finished text, we'll use 2 question marks and we'll put in the count. So we'll use the quotes to make it a string, / open close parentheses, and pass in the count. And finally, this onReceive, we're still going to look at the timer, but we're not going to use the date value that actually comes out of it. Instead, we're just going to perform some action every second. So because we don't need that date, I'm just going to make it back into an underscore. And then in here, let's put in a little bit of logic. We're going to say if count is less than 1, open the brackets. So if it's less than 1, let's add some finished text and it's done. So we'll set finished text equal to wow. We'll say else. So if it's equal to or greater than 1, we'll say count minus equals 1. So we're just going to subtract the count by 1. Let's click resume on the canvas. And now we have our very simple countdown going down from 10 all the way down to 0. Hopefully at 0 we get our finished text. And we saw the 0 and then it said wow, but let's actually just make it less than or equal to 1 so that we don't actually see the 0. So it just goes down to 1 and then finished text. 2, 1, wow. Wow guys, that was awesome. And it was pretty simple to implement. Again, we set up our publisher, we listened to the publisher, and then we performed an action. Let's take this to the next level because this countdown was awesome, but sometimes in your app you want to count down based on time. It's a pretty common thing I've seen on Stack Overflow because a lot of apps, right, when you match or connect with someone, maybe you have like 1 hour to perform a task, or maybe you have 24 hours to do something. Well, in that case, you would want to put that countdown time on the screen. So let's do that now. So I'm going to make another multi-line comment here, and I'm going to fold this up. Let's make another comment here. I'm going to call this countdown to date. And let's do @state var. Let's call it time remaining of type string, and let's set it equal to a blank string to start. Let's put that in our text. We'll do time remaining. And let's first set up the future date. So if this person had maybe 24 hours left, we'll say let future date of type date, and we'll set it equal to calendar.current. This is the user's current local calendar .date, and we're going to type in adding, and there's a super simple completion here, date by adding a value to. So we are going to add .day and 1, so 24 hours to today's date. And this is optional, so we'll just do 2 question marks, and for whatever reason, if this doesn't work out, we'll just put in today's date. We know it's going to work out, obviously, but if this was your actual app, you wouldn't be adding this, you probably wouldn't be setting up this date right here. You'd probably have some logic somewhere in your app that was actually storing how much time was left or when the 24 hours completes, and you would just put that as the future date. For right now, our future date is going to be 24 hours ahead of right now, which is just 1 day ahead of right now. And then we're going to create a function, and normally I put the functions underneath the body, but I'm just going to put this function above the body for this one section here. We're going to say func update time remaining, open close parentheses, open the brackets. And we're just going to call this function from the onReceive. So in here, I'm just going to put update time remaining. So every 1 second, this function will get called. And for this function, all we need to do is find out how much time is remaining between the current time and this future date. So we'll say let remaining equals calendar.current.date components. And we're going to look for the date components that have the from and to date here. So from a start date and to an end date. Let's click enter. And here we can create a set, which is basically an array. And we can press the period here and get all of the data that we want from this. And so we're going to want the hours and maybe the minutes and maybe the seconds. And the time remaining is from the current time right now, so date, to the future date. All right, I'll zoom out here just to make it on one line. And then we just want to get the hour, the minute, the seconds from how much is remaining. So let's say let hour equals remaining.hour, and it's optional. So if there is none left, we'll put it as 0. We'll say let minute equals remaining.minute, otherwise 0, and let second equals remaining.second, otherwise 0. And then we will set the time remaining equal to a string, and we're just going to pass in, and we're just going to convert this hour, minute, seconds to a string here. So we'll do backslash open close parentheses, we'll do hour, and then let's add maybe a colon, backslash open close parentheses, minute, colon, and then backslash open close parentheses, second. And let's resume the canvas, see what this looks like. And hopefully we have our hour, minute, second on the screen. So we set it to 1 day in advance, which is 24 hours, and we can see that our countdown is now going down from 24 hours down to our future date. Of course, I could have changed this around, so if instead of we wanted to add a day, if we wanted to add maybe 1 hour, we could click resume, and we should get 0 hours, 59 minutes, 54 seconds. We could do more formatting here to make this like 2 zeros always or something like that, but I'm not going to get into all that formatting because this is more focused on the timer. But if we had this display with just minutes and seconds, we might want to not use the hour, so I'll just delete the hour. And then maybe we would change up this string to be, say, minutes, comma, space, and then seconds. That might be more readable for our app here. You can play around with it, of course, but the point here I'm getting across is that we can use this timer to count down to future date, and we can also just call functions from within this timer. So this is really helpful if you want to call any function every 1 second. And of course, you could change the timing here. So if you want this timer to go up every 5 seconds, every 10 seconds, all you need to do is change this number. I'm going to show you 2 more really cool things I like to do with timers. So let's / asterisk and then asterisk / and make this a multi-line comment and then fold it on up. And one more, let's make a comment here. This will be an animation counter. And here I'm just going to make an @state var. We'll say count of type int, and we'll set it equal to 0. For this one, we're not going to use text. Instead, I'm going to make a hstack, open the brackets. I'm going to add a circle, and I'm going to copy and paste this twice. So we have 3 circles, and let's give it a foreground color of white. I'm going to just get rid of this function here quickly. Click resume on the canvas, see what we're working with. We should just have 3 pretty big circles on the screen. All right, let's give this some spacing of maybe 15. Let's give this a frame with a width of maybe 200. That looks good. Some of you probably know where I'm going with this already. Let's give these an offset. I'm going to go down to the one with the X and the Y, and we're not going to use the X, we're just going to use the Y here. And we'll say count. If the count is equal to 1, let's give it an offset of 20, otherwise 0. I'm going to copy this and paste it on both of my other circles. And the second circle is going to be if the count is equal to 2, and the third one, count is equal to 3. On the timer now, we're just going to add 1 to the count. So we'll say if count is equal to 3, so if it's at the max, we're just going to reset count equal to 0. Else, we'll say count plus equals 1. So let's click resume on the canvas. And actually these should be -20, sorry, so -20. And let's click play on the simulator, see if this is working. It looks like it's working, but let's make it a little more professional. So this bit of code here, I can actually put onto one line. So we can do, instead of all this, we can say count equals, if the count is equal to 3, question mark, we'll put it at 0. Otherwise, it'll be equal to count plus 1. So again, this is the exact same code as this. I'm going to delete this, and for this code here, I'm just going to do it with animation. And I want to make this animation happen at the same timing as my timer. So my timer is going off every 1 second. So down here, I'm going to say .ease in out, and I'm going to use the duration of 1 second. Open the brackets. Let's put the count inside. Let's stop it. Let's press it play one more time. And just like that, we now have a pretty cool loading animation. I think we can make this look a little better, so I'm going to stop the preview quickly. Let's make the width of this maybe 150, so it's a little smaller. And then let's update the timer to maybe 0.5 seconds. Let's update the animation to also 0.5. And if I click play on the canvas, it should be a pretty cool loading animation. Now, of course, you can customize this and get this to be perfect. But the fact that we can make this awesome loading animation in just a couple seconds using a timer, I think is really, really cool. And I want to wrap up with one more really cool example that I've used in apps. I've seen it in apps, and I've actually seen a couple of you request it in the comments. So we are going to use the page tab view. Let's delete this H stack. Let's create a tab view. And when we open the parentheses here, let's use the selection and content. Press enter, and the selection is going to be binding to our count. And for the content, I'm going to add just a rectangle, open close parentheses, and let's just give it a tag of 1. I'm going to also give this a foreground color of red. And then I'm just going to copy and paste this a couple times, so we have a bunch here. Let's make this one blue. We'll give it a tag of 2. We'll do green. We'll give it a tag of 3. This one will be a tag of 4, tag of 5. Let's change up the colors. Orange. Let's do maybe pink. And of course, when you do this in your app, this rectangle is not going to be a rectangle. It's going to be your own custom view or an image that you want to show. And when you do it, you should probably do a for each loop on some data and not just add these rectangles 5 or 6 times. But we're just doing this for simplicity's sake. On the tab view, let's give this a tab view style, and we'll use page tab view style, open close parentheses. And on this, let's also give this a frame with a height of maybe 200. Alright, so if you've seen maybe on like TikTok or something, there's a lot of apps now where they have like this header on top of maybe the explore page, and then there's an advertisement or a picture in it, and then you can swipe it to the right and you can get you can see all the different pictures. But we're just going to animate it on a timer. So we have 5 here, so let's just change the timer logic to 5. And we don't need it to animate exactly in sync, so instead of this easing out, let's just use .default. And because we want the user to actually look at this picture for a couple seconds, let's make it change every maybe 3 seconds. In reality, that's still probably fast for your app, but let's press resume and just press play on the simulator, see what it looks like quick. Press play, and now every 3 seconds, this should animate. And we go to the second screen, we go to the third screen, we go to the fourth screen, we go to the fifth screen, and then on the fifth screen it should go back to 0. Awesome. And I think we should actually start at number 1 for this just to make it better. So let's start this at 1. let's start this at 1, and I think we now have a working carousel here where we could put in a bunch of pictures or some really cool content. And yeah, so that was not a lot of lines of code to get something like this to be happening in your app, which obviously gives a really great user experience. The one thing I want you guys to take away from this video isn't actually the timer itself, but the fact that this timer up here is actually a publisher. So we're creating a object up here that's going to continually publish values over time. So obviously it's easy to think about when we're using a timer because every 3 seconds it's publishing a value. But we can actually create our own custom publishers that will publish values, maybe not every 3 seconds, but over time. And then after creating a publisher, we can subscribe to the publisher. So we used onReceive here to listen to that publisher and then perform an action every time something gets published. And I did this video first because in the next video, we're going to actually create some more custom publishers and custom subscribers. So it's going to be a whole lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, I'm Nick, this is Swiftful Thinking, and I'll see you in the next video.